everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer.
And I'm Larry the Lion.
And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing Laserdisc arcade games.
Laserdiscs themselves came out in the late 70s. They were supposed to be an alternative to the video cassette or VCR and the beta tapes. If you're not familiar with what the beta tapes are, ask one of your parents or your grandparents about that. And these suckers were huge. They're roughly about the size of an LP, or record, if you will. And unfortunately, they really didn't catch on that well in the United States or in Europe. Although they weren't very big in private homes in the United States, they actually were quite useful in education. When I was teaching, just about every building had at least one Laserdisc player, but not a lot of Laserdiscs to go around. Officially, Laserdiscs were still being manufactured up until the mid-90s. In recent years, it seems that people have a renewed interest in them for one reason or another.
To give you an idea of just how big they were, here's a comparison with a standard-sized DVD. Believe it or not, they actually have some players out there that will accommodate both a DVD and a Laserdisc. You want to know my opinion?
Sure, of course.
I think the reason they didn't catch on or last is because, the movie quality was great and everything, but you couldn't record on it. You could record on a video cassette, but that's my opinion.
Well, I agree with you. That's probably one of the biggest reasons.
In the early 80s, game programmers began to look at this new technology as a way of making new video games.
With this new technology, game programmers were able to make these really intense and high-def games, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I like that.
That's true, but I don't think they used high-def back then, or really knew what it was. But anyway, so these games that were made were just extremely intense and would easily bypass the limitations that even arcade machines had back then. Even though this new technology allowed programmers to make these really, really intense games, there were some other limitations that they did face.
Right, you'll see that when we show you the footage from some of the games.
On a special side note, I want to let you guys know that I got the footage from 3 of the games, Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair 2, and Space Ace, from my PS4. So this will be the first episode in my series where you actually get to see game footage from my PS4.
That's right. Now, what he purchased is this program or game called Dragon's Lair Trilogy for the PS4. It has all 3 of those games on it, and you can get it on the PS Store for $20.
Right. So if you want to see the games as they were in the arcade and as close to the arcade as you can get, that is the place to get them. Of course, they are also available on Steam, but you're going to pay $10 each for them, so it's almost like getting a game for free if you purchase it at the PS Store. All right, you ready to get started?
Yep, ready when you are.
All right then, so let's check out some Laserdisc arcade games.
And our first game for today is Dragon's Lair. It was published by Cinematronics and developed by Advanced Microcomputer Systems in 1983. It was designed by Don Bluth and Rick Dyer and programmed by Michael Neuer and Vince Lee. Okay, so in this game you take on the role of Dirk the Daring, a knight who is attempting to rescue Princess Daphne from the evil dragon Singe, who has locked the princess in the foul wizard Mordoc's castle. Right now, it was done using this Laserdisc technology because of the limitations of what they used to call secession. And by using the vast storage of the Laserdisc, they were better able to use this animation that you see here. Now, the best way to explain how the game actually works when you're playing it, the player does not actually control the actions directly like you would in like a Mario game, but you basically control his reflexes with different full motion video segments playing for correct or incorrect choices. The game consists of a sequence of challenges played in a random order. Some scenes are played more than once before reaching the end, and additionally, some scenes are flipped or mirrored such that the opposite actions are required. One thing, the best way I can describe this is it's a game of memorization. You have to remember what to do in which scenes. Now, if you purchase the DVD version of this, it actually comes with a cheat sheet that lets you know what to do at which time. Now, for almost like a half a second or so, it does show you which direction to go, but it's probably a better idea just to memorize what to do and when.
As beautiful as this game is, it's hard to believe that they actually made this game on a small budget. It actually cost them about $1.3 million to make it and took 7 months, which isn't much when you consider that how much video games and movies today cost, even back then with inflation.
As great and as groundbreaking as the game Dragon's Lair was, it was ported out several times, just like any popular video game would be. And I mean a lot of times.
Yeah, it actually is one of the most ported games in history.
It sure is.
Incidentally, were the ports any good?
Well, no. But we'll discuss that in an AVP episode about this game.
And our next game is Space Ace. Now, this was also developed by Advanced Microcomputing Systems and published by Cinematronics Digital Leisure, and was designed also by Don Bluth. If that name sounds familiar, it should, because he was an animator and made some really cool movies himself.
All right, like American Tail, let's see, Secret of Nim. The list goes on, but yeah, he was a Class A animator, and this game actually came out just 4 months after Dragon's Lair did. Okay, now Space Ace is quite similar to Dragon's Lair in that it's a bunch of individual scenes which require the player to move the joystick in the right direction or press the fire button at the right time to avoid various hazards. Now, the story is that you take on the role of Dexter, who prefers to be called Ace, and you're on a mission to stop Commander Borf, who is trying to attack Earth with this thing called an Infanto Ray to turn Earthlings back into infants. Now, Ace is actually hit with part of the Infanto Ray, which turns him into an annoying adolescent, which is basically Dexter. And he's trying to rescue his female sidekick, Kimberly, who is more or less the damsel in distress. So yeah, this was back in those days when women were considered helpless and, never got to be the tough protagonist. Of course, we moved on since then, and now it's, if this game was being made nowadays, the roles would probably be reversed. Now, the humor in this game is really good. The dialogue is very well written. The jokes are really something else. A big step up from Dragon's Lair in that sense. So, in a lot of ways you could say that it is, in some ways, a step up. And also, as another side note, this game is a lot more difficult than Dragon's Lair, just to let you know. And like Dragon's Lair, it was also ported out quite a few times. Nowhere near to the level, or I should say the number that Dragon's Lair was ported, but it was ported out a considerable amount of times.
How were they?
Well, it was kind of hit or miss. One thing you got to remember, though, is that at the time period, it was nearly impossible to replicate the quality of the Laserdisc. It wouldn't be until the late 90s when you would get disc, powered video game consoles, and even not even that good until you got into the Blu-ray quality disc games such as the PS3 and PS4, that you would be able to almost perfectly replicate the Laserdisc games. So
what you're saying is sometimes they got it pretty close, or as close as they could.
Yeah, and we will definitely have an AVP episode for Dragon's Lair and for Space Ace. And next up, we have Dragon's Lair 2, Time Warp. This was released in 1991 by the Leland Corporation and was developed by Sullivan Bluth Interactive Media. Alright, in this game, you once again take on the role of Dirk the Daring, and you have to rescue Daphne again. And this time, you and her have married, and you have a bunch of kids. Now, another wizard, Mordrock, has kidnapped her and wants to marry her. Okay, and he's trying to put this dreaded death ring on her that will make her like a zombie. Now, this game is a little different in the fact that it does follow a linear sequence. There's no randomization on this one. And you actually have different treasures that you can pick up on the way for extra points. Really a pretty cool game. It follows a lot of, I guess you could say, fairy tale-like sequences. It's very similar to the King's Quest games, more than I would say the original Dragon's Lair game. So, really a cool game. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed playing it, which,
Yeah, that's kind of weird because you really like the other two.
yeah, but sometimes sequels don't live up to, I guess, the hype, but this one sure did. Also, unlike the other games, this one wasn't ported out very many times. Now, there were plans to port it out for the Sega Saturn, the Philips CDI, the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer, and the Atari Jaguar. However, only the CDI version was actually released, even though there were demos for the other ones that you could find. It was later released to the Wii as part of the Dragon's Lair trilogy.
That would be kind of cool to play them on the Wii.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try that. We got a Wii. I just, haven't got it yet. It was also released for the PlayStation 3 and the Nintendo Switch. And, of course, for the PlayStation 4 as part of the Dragon's Lair trilogy. And our final game for today is Us vs. Them. This was released in 1984 by Milestar Gottlieb and was created by Warren Davis, who was also the creator of Q*bert. Alright, in Us vs. Them, you pilot a starship and must protect Earth against alien invaders. You would see frightened citizens and military command personnel as small intermissions throughout the game. Your mission takes place over San Francisco, Chicago, and Hollywood, as well as through forest, mountain, and desert terrain. The best way I can describe this game is playing a movie, more or less. First time I ever played this game was at this place we had called Celebration Station.
I remember that.
Yeah, and they had the game in a cockpit cabinet, and it costs $1 to play, but it was worth playing at least once. I didn't get very far, but man, it was pretty intense for its time, and probably for all times, I would have to say, as this was the first of its kind.
Unlike the other games on this list, Us vs. Them has not yet been re-released. I don't know if it's some copyright issue or because of the fact that they had actual actors or whatever it is. I was kind of surprised about that too, because all the other games were released in some way, shape, or form on different systems and consoles, but Us vs. Them never was. As a matter of fact, I remember back in the day playing it. I do distinctly remember playing it, the full game, on MAME, but for some reason it no longer works on MAME. So let's just hope someday someone is able to put this game out on a current console or a future one, or make it so that it will be available to play at the PlayStation Store or Xbox Live or something, because I think a lot of people are missing out on a really cool game by not being able to play this one. Well, that brings us to the end of another exciting episode of Classic Gamer 74. I really hope you all enjoyed it. I did. I did too. And if you did enjoy it, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when we upload new videos.
In my next episode, I'm going to discuss emulators by request of one of my loyal viewers. Which ones do I use? Which do I recommend for each game system? And how do I record my game footage? You'll find out next week, so don't miss it.
So until next time, I'm Anthony Gamer.
I'm Lair the Lion.
And we will see all of you in the next episode. Stay healthy and stay safe. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.